am so excited you're here today because I'm going to talk about some more of my favorite horror books that I read this year. I did do this video back in March, end of March, beginning of April, I believe. I'll leave that linked down below. I was trying to get one out every 3 months, but that just didn't happen. But you guys know I have been reading a ton of horror books this year. I'm on track to read over 300, so I'm super excited about that, or just 300 books in general. Not all horror. Mostly horror. So let's get right into it. If you do hear construction noises, I will try to stop when it is very loud, but this is the only time I can film, sadly, and they decided to rip up the whole road outside my house. So yeah, that has been great. So let's get right into it. I'm probably missing some because I am trying to do this very quickly and no particular order whatsoever, so let's just do it. Starting off with Nightblood by T. Chris Martindale. This is a vampire paperback from hell. I absolutely loved this. I raved about it this summer. I believed I read this for a vampire reading vlog at the beginning of summer. I will leave that link down below so you can hear more of my thoughts on it. This is absolutely wonderful. One of my favorite paperbacks from hell I have ever read. It is on my 23 and 23 and by far, like, yeah, one of my favorite ones this year. And this is about a guy who is kind of being haunted by his brother and instructed by his brother to go hunt vampires. It's very good, great action scenes, and just a great main character too. You're really rooting for him. The next book is Mapping the Interior by Stephen Graham Jones. I absolutely loved this one. It is a really short little novella about a boy grieving the loss of his father and starting to see his ghost. So it is a bit of like a spooky ghost situation happening in this. Where this one goes though, I was like bawling. It was amazing. Stephen Graham Jones, one of my favorite authors, can do no wrong. Yeah, definitely check this one out if you're looking for a good, like, compelling short little novella. And the next book is Disappearance at Devil's Rock by Paul Tremblay. I talked about this in one of my recent vlogs too this summer where I did coming of age horror. This is about a young boy that goes missing in a national park, and it starts off from the POV of his mother getting the news that his friends do not know where he is at, and this is a pretty dangerous area where he goes missing. So it is about that, and it is kind of about the kids themselves and like what they stumbled upon. So it's really interesting and also like so freaking creepy, and the ending, like, I have goosebumps thinking about the ending. I never see this one talked about. It is fantastic, and yeah, highly suggest checking out if you like coming of age horror. Next book I kind of took horror booktube and bookstagram and BookTok by storm. You guys know all about this one. Is Maeve Fly by CJ Lady. This is a debut novel, which I actually didn't know until pretty recently, and I was like, dang. So this is a female American Psycho-esque story. I'd say it's much shorter than American Psycho, also way less boring than American Psycho, and you just love Maeve. She's very flawed. She is a Disney princess. I believe she's Elsa or something. Like, you get the hint she's Elsa at Disneyland in LA, and it has like all of those LA vibes, which is very cool, and Halloween vibes. This would be a fun one to read around Halloween because Maeve loves Halloween and she loves Halloween music, and she actually decorates in this story, in this book, and it's hilarious and it's fantastic, and I loved it, and 5 stars for Maeve Fly. That's why you clicked on this video. It's my favorite 5-star horror reads. The next book I read in April, for old school April, and that is Take Your Turn Teddy by Haley Newland. I loved this story. It started out with, well, it's a rough one, so beware, look up trigger warnings, content warnings for this one for sure. For everything here, yes. This is about a little boy whose parents are going through a pretty very rough separation. The dad is horrific and tracks them down, and some stuff goes down, and he ends up meeting this Shadow, and that is all I'm going to say about this. This one takes a turn about almost halfway through, and it does turn into a police procedural, so be on the lookout for that. I know a lot of people don't like to read like police detective POVs. Me, on the other hand, I love that. I love like Karen Slaughter books that do that. So yeah, I absolutely love this story. It is really interesting what Haley Newland does, like mixing in like the psychology of the shadow self in with like this horror and a good detective story. So yeah, definitely worth checking out. Okay, so if I look a little different, I took a little bit of a break and ate some lunch to wait out this construction, but hopefully it's a little better now. And I believe we left off on Lone Woman by Victor Laval. This is about a woman moving from Texas to Wyoming after her family ends up dying in a fire. She is moving with a giant trunk, and there is something in the trunk, and that's pretty much all I'm going to say about this one. I think it's really fun going into this one and not knowing a ton. And yeah, what ends up happening in this is so fun and great, and like just a really good story. It has all the emotions in it as well. And I like the little bits of folklore that you get sprinkled in. This is one of my favorite Laval books. I have read quite a few of his books, and this one is at the top of my list now. Here we are again with another paperback from hell, Familiar Spirit by Lisa Tuttle. This is one of my favorite paperbacks from hell that I read this year. It is on my 23 and 23, and I read this with my friends Kelsi and Andrew. You guys know who they are. I talk about them all the time on this channel, but if you don't, their channels will be linked in the description box down below, so you can go check them out. And yeah, we had a ton of fun with this one. It is so bananas. It's 5 stars, right? It's so wacky, but there's some genuinely creepy moments in this, especially towards the beginning, and then at the end it's just full on bonkers, and you're like, I love it. It's so good. I love Lisa Tuttle. I realized after Nest of Nightmares and this one are both 5 stars, so yeah, I'm excited to read more from her, and yeah, this is just super zany and fun. And oh, what is it about? It's about this woman who moves into a tiny house, and she thinks it's haunted, of course, but it turns out to be something very different, and it actually is kind of represented here on the cover a bit, I feel like. And yeah, this is funny because it has nudity on the cover, so it would work for Garb August if you guys are trying to finish up some Garb August proms. This will work for the bingo board. But anyways, it was so fun. Some trigger warnings too for this one at the beginning. A couple cats do die. It's not graphic. It's just like something that just happens. And yeah, it wasn't like super sad to me or anything. But yeah, just a little bit of a content warning there. And you guys know I was going to talk about this book. I actually read this, I believe, in July. For an ARC reading vlog that I'll leave linked down below. I actually ended up reading some pretty good books out of that reading vlog, but one of them is Dead 11 by Jimmy Giuliano. This is actually like his debut technically, but he also wrote like a bunch of creepypastas that are out there. I'm not too familiar with which ones, but I didn't know that either. And I also didn't know this was a debut novel until pretty recently. But yeah, as you can tell from the cover, there is some old technology happening here, and it's a bit of a chunker. This is a bit of a slow burn mystery horror, I would say. But the first chapter in this is so gripping, and if you're a David Lynch fan, it feels very Lynchian, and you're just like, wait a second, I need to know like what the heck is going on this island, and the mystery aspect to it. So we actually mostly follow a guy looking for his sister, but it does bounce around. So you get the sister's POV from the past, you get letters, you get interviews. It's like a very mixed media book. The audiobook is great. It's full cast, and it has like, when it does an interview, it like switches over to the interview, and it has like all of that high production value in the audiobook that I absolutely love these days. And yeah, I haven't read it physically, but I did borrow this from my local library recently, and I want to like kind of go through and see if I missed anything from the audio. I'm sure the audio, same with episode 13, has like a PDF or something with it. They usually do, but I always miss it because I'm always just listening to the audiobook. But yeah, I absolutely loved this, and I don't want to say too much about it because it does get very weird, but when it is slow, it is building that atmosphere and building the tension, and then you're in a full-on horror scene, and then it just takes a turn. It's so great. So yeah, highly recommend this one if you like found footage or mixed media books. And you guys know I was going to talk about Blackwater by Michael McDowell. Boy, oh boy, I absolutely loved this one. I talk about it a lot now. I talk about it maybe a little too much. This is one of my all-time favorite books of my life, I think now. Like, I thought about it pretty recently because I did an interview with my friend Jack, and in that interview I was like, yeah, I think this is like the book that has like kind of shifted things for me in perspective to just reading, and like what makes that book that is just like your all-time favorite for life. Yeah, is Blackwater by Michael McDowell. This, as you can see, it is huge. It's technically 6 books in one. They were released all separately, and this is a family saga book, so there is quite a bit of family drama in it, but that never felt like a lot to me. It felt really interesting, and I really liked the characters. But we follow our main character, who is found after a flood, and it kicks off, I believe, in the 1920s, and she's picked up by this dude who has a pretty large family. They run a mill in the town, and he's like, I love you, and she's like, sure, let's get married, you know, like, and they start a family, and yeah, it has like all of those family dynamics in it, but also like it will shift into a very spooky scene, like a haunted house-esque scene, but there's also something else going on with Eleanor, our main character. So yeah, definitely worth checking out. A great book to end summer with. This is all the summer vibes, as you can tell. It is very swampy, it's very wet, it's next to a river the whole time, and yeah, our main character has some connections to the river, and there's great like little bits of revenge in this as well that I absolutely loved and got behind, and oh, it's so good. I haven't read a McDowell. No, I have read a McDowell since then, but it was like hit under a different pen name. So technically, no, I haven't. But yeah, one of my all-time favorite books. I will probably talk about this book until I die. And another Stephen Graham Jones book, Don't Fear the Reaper. This is the sequel to My Heart is a Chainsaw. And this one is very different from My Heart is a Chainsaw. You follow multiple people instead of just Jade. And it's told in a more generic, I guess, format, slasher format. It's very cinematic at times. And it just has some really great kills in it. If you're a slasher fan, you'll absolutely love it. You'll love all the references. They go over new horror movies with Jade, because Jade's kind of been out of the loop since My Heart is a Chainsaw, and it's absolutely fantastic. You get Jade again, and yeah, I love the ending of this too. So what happens at the end of this is one of my absolute favorite slasher tropes that I like seeing in slasher movies. So 5 stars. It was so much fun. I highly recommend the audiobook. It is full cast, and it does have that high production value to it as well. And yeah, the writing, mwah, 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 a million chef's kisses. It is so, so good. And then another pretty recent book too, Touch the Night by Max Booth III. I was like, oh, this is I feel like this is a love letter to Texas Chainsaw Massacre done in a very unique way. It follows 2 12-year-old boys who are abducted by cops. They're not, as you find out right off the bat, and their mothers who are looking for them, and they are African American in this small town in the early 2000s, so of course they're not taken seriously by the cops there. So it does have that tension there in the mother's chapters, and yeah, I was a little upset at the ending of this at first, but it stuck with me, and I feel like it makes sense. If you're a fan of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I feel like it fits like right in with the theme of the original movie. So yeah, I really liked this. The writing is fantastic. You guys know I'm a big Max Booth III fan anyways. I love Maggots Screaming. It was one of my favorite books of 2022. And yeah, this one has stuck with me. I still think about it because it was recently August 18th, and you guys know what day that is. That is Texas Chainsaw Massacre Day. I was thinking of Touch the Night. I was like, oh my gosh, that book, Touch the Night, is like an early 2000s Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So yeah, absolutely loved it. It's so weird too, and just a very unique story. So very quickly, a couple of slashers that I really liked this year. Dead Girls Blues by David Sodergren. I would think this does count as a slasher. It's more of a, what do you call it, like those Italian, I'm totally blanking right now on what are those called? Oh my gosh. Like Lucio Fulci, like style. It's like a homage to those films. The Black Gloved Killers. It's very much a homage of that, but it's way darker, I feel like, than any of those films that I've seen personally. And yeah, it's so good. It is like lost technology too. Book, because a girl finds a video on a cell phone and then ends up finding more videos, and yeah, so it was fantastic. There is a scene in this where I was just like hooked. The tension, oh my gosh, I was like sweating for this girl, like in this situation. It was very cinematic, and yeah, I loved it, and I'm excited to read more from David Sodergren. Another slasher I really liked was Escape from Happydale by Jack Quaid. This is kind of like a Buffy homage, but she's not hunting vampires, she's hunting slasher. She's hunting serial killers that are like from slashers or from different massacres and stuff. And yeah, I thought that was so great. It has its own lore in this book. This is a series, so I'm excited to pick up more whenever I read a bunch of slashers again. And yeah, I absolutely loved this. It was very hooked, and it does all of those Buffy things, but different because it's slashers, if you know what I mean. And a couple of thrillers that I really enjoyed, like just binging, have been Stillhouse Lake and Kilman Creek by Rachel Kane. The first two in this series, they're available on KU, and I believe the audio is with them. And this is about a woman whose husband is convicted of being a serial killer, but yeah, it's just like how the media treats her, and like how she's dealing with it, and they think there's like a copycat, and then something happens at the end of this to where you really have to read the second book like immediately, and you're like hooked. It's so good. And I also talked about this a lot when I read this in May, is that I think Rachel Kane, what she did was very clever in this, is to point out all the sexism and in the world and misogyny, and like put it in this character. I thought was done very, very well, and yeah, got a 5 stars for me, and I'm excited to read more from the series because I heard it's like really, really good, and I believe everybody about that. Another thriller I really liked that was very popular was The Last Word by Taylor Adams. It hits a little close to home, so maybe I did like it for that reason. The synopsis got me hooked. This is about a woman that gives a 1-star review on Amazon, and the author comes after her. That hits a little close to home, right? So I really liked this. It ended up being a little predictable, I will say, but I wasn't trying to predict it at any point. When stuff did start to happen, I was like, oh, it's, you knew, like, it's fun if you guess it. And yeah, I just had a blast with this character. The character was great. The dog in this is great, and yeah, the dog's good, you guys. You worry though. So spoiler alert for that. But yeah, I absolutely loved this, and yeah, I love the character so much, and yeah, gave it 5 stars. I was so hooked. I needed to know everything. And then the last book I'm going to talk about is The House with Good Bones by T. Kingfisher. I did technically give this one 4.5 star, but I think it's such a great book. It's such a great summer read. I'm a big T. Kingfisher fan, so I kind of knew I was going to love this one, and when my loan came in on Libby, I listened to it in one day because it's just that good. So this is about a woman that moves back in with her mom in North Carolina, and some stuff starts to happen that is very reminiscent of her grandmother, because it is her grandmother's house. So she's kind of like, what's going on? And her grandma wasn't exactly a great person, so she's like, what is up? What is going on? And where this freaking goes, I was just like rooting. I was just on the sidelines of this book, like with my little cheerleader things, like waving them, or my little cult cheerleader pom-poms, because I absolutely loved where this goes. It goes very deep into like occult stuff, I feel like, for being a short book, and it's very weird, and I wasn't expecting it. There's some awesome imagery in this, and yeah, one of my favorite summer horror books that I've read this year. And I loved it, and I loved all the messaging in it, and also the character is so good. T. Kingfisher writes the best characters. Like, I was with this main character like through and through. I was like, yes, this is all very bizarre. I'm right here. I'm cheering you on. So yeah, definitely worth checking out if you haven't yet. I know this one's been pretty popular. But I absolutely loved it. So there you have it. Those are some of my favorite horror books that I've read since April? What day is it? I don't know. Thanks for sticking around this long. This video I know is going to be very chaotic, but if you stuck through, let me know some of your favorite horror books that you've read this year. I always want to know what you guys are reading, and yeah, I'm always looking for recommendations, so please leave all the recs in the comments down below, and I hope you guys have a fantastic day. Bye!